What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Go Talk with Marcus, powered by Podex, fueled by Go Fuel. This would be episode 65 of season 2, episode 198 overall. Joined by one half of JT and the Don. JT, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's going on, man? You didn't give me no countdown or nothing. You was just like saying one thing, and then I seen the screen go dark. Now I don't know what's going on. Are we live right now? You didn't give me no warning. See, that's how he does, man.
Things happened very quickly. You're right. I didn't give JT a warning before I started recording. He is right. I had to go turn my TV off, make sure you guys didn't hear the baseball in the background. So for those of you guys that don't know, this is kind of a short extension of the 33 episode off-season series that I've done over the course of the off-season, getting ready for the NFL. The first episode, which dropped on Sunday, was players and coaches that are under pressure. I had Jerm on for that one. Tuesday, dropped an episode with my guy Jalen, talking about ranking offenses and defenses heading into the season. So today, as you can kind of assume by the title, JT and I are going to rank our top 5 Super Bowl contenders and our top 5 dark horses heading into this season. Let's jump right into it. JT, who are your 5 Super Bowl dark horses for this season?
Dark horses, I don't have them in any particular order. I just got these 5. I'm going with the Ravens, the Packers, the 49ers. Since I don't want to get any hate, that I don't love my team, even though I don't think it's realistic, I'll throw the Dolphins. I'll throw the Dolphins in there. So if you guys are watching, the Dolphins are in my 5 dark horses. And for number 5, I got to say the Patriots. Like, I just can't sleep on Bill Belichick. Like, those are the 5 dark horses that I have, and it wouldn't surprise me if they just weasel their way to the Super Bowl, except for the Dolphins, which is obviously just a joke.
Are you not concerned about the fact that the Patriots don't have an offensive play caller and they haven't looked that good offensively in training camp or in preseason games for the most part so far?
I'm concerned because it's Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, but I mean, the Patriots had them before, so certain people have told me to calm down. But here's the one consistent thing: it's Bill Belichick. I mean, can we say he's the best coach in NFL? Until he retires, he is. So as long as they have him, I mean, I can't bet against him. I mean, he's been beating us for 20 plus years. So like, it just could be, I'm just used to it. So until I see him completely fall off the wagon, I just can't go against him. And the only really bad blemish on his record was COVID year. I mean, that could happen to anybody. They had all the opt-outs. But yeah, I mean, I think they'll figure it out. But really, the Patriots, they don't need all that flashy stuff because they're just, what they do is every year they're going to run the ball down your throat and they're going to play defense and not beat themselves up.
That's fair. I think, I don't know. There's a lot of people that are like high on Mac Jones. A lot of people that are like really like don't worry about the off. Like for a young, I feel like if you had like I won't use Tom Brady. That's like such an outlier kind of example. But like if you had any type of veteran quarterback, I feel like you could get away with not having an offensive play caller. I don't think you can get away with that for a guy in Mac Jones who's entering his second year in the league. Like he needs to know, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But like there needs to be some sort of established, this is the guy that's calling the plays for you so that he can be comfortable because it's early in his career. Like if you have a Tom Brady or if you have a Pat Mahomes or one of these other elite quarterbacks or veteran quarterbacks in the league, like I don't think that really matters because they're going to have their own identity and they're set in stone with how they play and they're going to play ball because they've peaked. Mac Jones hasn't peaked. He hasn't entered his prime. There's still it's not as steep as it was last year, of course, because he's entering his sophomore season, but there is still a bit of a learning curve as far as what it is that he needs to do and be able to perfect as he gets better. I don't know if that's the best way to go about things, but then again, who am I to question the great Bill Belichick and his decisions?
But be honest, what's so different about Mac Jones' situation now with the Patriots and then when he was at Bama? Like all they're going to do is turn around, hand the ball off to a bunch of talented running backs.
That's true.
Not do dumb things to lose in the game.
Sure.
Defense is going to keep him in it. And, he might throw a slant pass or maybe hit somebody, downfield every once in a while. Like this is what he did at Bama. So, I mean, the situation is tailor-made for him. It's just, I just got so much faith in Belichick, and he's worth at least 6 or 7 wins, like with no talent. Like just him showing up. Like he's worth his win share is ridiculous just because he knows what he's doing. and they just don't beat themselves. And I'm
Yeah.
saying all this shit as a Dolphins fan, and this makes me feel even worse.
That's fair. So my dark horses, I'll rank them from 5 to 1. 5 being like the team of the 5 that's most likely to make it. 1 being the team that's least likely of the 5 to make it. Number 5 would be the Saints. The big question mark for the Saints, of course, would be Jameis Winston because he's coming off the ACL injury. But last season before the ACL, Jameis Winston was playing good ball, and the Saints were playing good football as a team. This is the team that has been ranked top 10 defensively for the last couple seasons, and they take that defense and they add Tyrann Mathieu to that defense. So now they have bona fide playmakers at all 3 levels. You've got a guy on your up front with Cam Jordan. You have a guy in the linebacker core, Demario Davis, and now you have Tyrann Mathieu as your safety, as the last line defense. Not to mention they still have C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who is going to be his tag team partner, so to speak, on the opposite side of the field. Obviously, the only way the Saints don't reach their ceiling, which I think is a trip to the Super Bowl this season, is if Jameis Winston goes back to how he was playing in Tampa Bay, which is throwing the ball all over the place, and that resulting in 30 turnovers, which I don't think we'll see from Jameis Winston this season. But this
Lightning can't strike twice, Wade.
I don't think it will, but like it could work either way. Like so I've got the Saints. I think the Colts are a dark horse Super Bowl contender because they're the Colts. I don't think the Colts are getting a lot of respect. A lot of that has to do with, I think, their wide receiver core not being like one of the best wide receiver cores in football. I do think, though, and I'm on record as saying this because I think that the Colts could potentially be a top 5 offense in the league this season because they have a really great offensive line. They have Jonathan Taylor, obviously. I do think that Matt Ryan's going to make this wide receiver core look better as far as production is concerned because he's a better quarterback than Carson Wentz at this point, and I think that'll translate to more decisive with his decisions, and wide receivers are going to know what's going on, and he's a leader. And when you have a veteran guy like that, they're going to be a lock for 4,000 yards passing because that's what Matt Ryan does. And the second Matt Ryan doesn't get 4,000 yards in a season, that would be probably his last season in the NFL. I don't think we're going to see anything less than 4,000 at least from Matt Ryan this season. Again, have no reason not to. Not to mention the fact that they're going to try to incorporate Nyheim Hines back into the offense since he missed a lot of last season due to injury. So like that could play a role as well into how dangerous they could be with now running the 2-back set with Taylor and Hines. The Eagles are on my list as a Super Bowl contender or as a dark horse, excuse me. Similar situation to with the Saints, except I do think that the Eagles are in a better position because I do think that the Eagles are more likely to win their division than the Saints are to win theirs, even though the Bucs are dealing with offensive line stuff. Like the Bucs still have Tom Brady, and it's hard to bet against Tom Brady winning that division. The Eagles have everything going for them. They have a solid defense. Their offensive line is one of the best in football. They invested in this team, especially offensively. The one question mark, of course, is can Jalen Hurts rise to the occasion and be what he needs to be, which is
it's a big if.
I feel like Jalen Hurts, at least statistically, has to be a top 15 quarterback this season for the Eagles to kind of reach their expectations, which is at least make it back to the playoffs. I don't think we can get another season like we got with Jalen Hurts last season, where there's a lot of indecisiveness and questionable decision making, and they can still, reach out and reach their potential. That brings me to number 2, which oddly enough is the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that them letting go of Kenyon Drake is a much bigger deal than a lot of people might maybe think it is. And the reason why is because Josh Jacobs has a lot of miles on him and he has an injury history. And when you have a running back like that, as great as or as good as Josh Jacobs is, and I think he's top 10 when he's healthy and when he's at his best, you still should have another guy that you can rely on to kind of take off some of that offensive load as far as running the ball. And now they don't have that. And then also their wide receiver core is pretty lackluster once you get past Hunter Renfrow and Devontae Adams because they let Zay Jones walk in the offseason. So that's a question mark as well. And, of course, Josh McDaniels, the last time we saw him be the head coach of a football team, it wasn't good.
He was getting flamed in Denver.
Granted, this is a much better roster than what he had in Denver, but
is it, though?
He could repeat it. I would say it's marginally better, but there's a lot more talent, I think, on both sides of the ball now than what he had in Denver. Maybe. Just maybe. It's a toss-up, but –
is that the number one? Is that your number one dark
horse?
No,
my number one dark horse, as crazy as it is the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not sold on their defense, but if Justin Jefferson is already this great and he could potentially be in that Cooper Kupp kind of thing, which is what we saw the Rams, used to get them to the bowl last year. Despite this defense not being that good, which I don't think it'll be that good, I could see a scenario with the Vikings, and it's crazy for me to say this as a Packers fan, but I could see a scenario where the Vikings make the playoffs and run the table, right? Whether they win the division or not doesn't really matter. I think they're a lock for the playoffs regardless, and I do think that as far as offensive firepower is concerned, they have it. You have Justin Jefferson, you have Dalvin Cook, you have Adam Thielen. You have the offensive line's not great, and then you've got Kirk Cousins, who statistically has been a top 15 quarterback in the league since he's joined Minnesota. So I wouldn't bet on it, but I also wouldn't be too surprised if Minnesota makes it. It really just depends on if their defense can answer the call, because I know that their offense is going to answer the call.
See, I gotta not push back. Maybe one I gotta push back on, but I gotta talk about a couple of your picks. But the Vikings, I actually like that one. I can see them being a dark horse. Only thing holding me back right now is it's just Hard Knocks. Like, Hard Knocks will make you think any team is going to the Super Bowl. And like, I'm just like, well, hey, like Dan Campbell's giving these crazy ass speeches. I'm seeing, St. Brown, Jared Goff's hitting every pass. Aiden Hutchinson looks like he's going to be a player. So I'm like, damn, like, let Hard Knocks fade away, and then I can jump on the Vikings bandwagon. But I like that pick. A couple of yours I want to ask you questions about. The Colts, personally, I think they're trash. And that's just me. And I'll tell you why. And I know everybody's really excited about Matt Ryan and is like, oh, yeah, Carson Wentz was the problem. But if you look at the numbers last year, Carson Wentz really wasn't that bad. Like, he probably played his most efficient season in his career. It just wasn't the big return to MVP form that they thought they were going to get. And I feel like they got rid of him more because of, locker room stuff than his play on the field. I'm watching Matt Ryan in the preseason with the Colts, and I'm starting to realize the Colts, I don't think they're a quarterback away. I don't think their issues are a quarterback issue. I think it's a personnel issue. They're just not that good. I mean, how good is Michael Pittman Jr. really? I know everybody's, hyping him up. This ain't a fantasy football show, but I mean, that's everybody loves Pittman Jr., but I'm like, is he an alpha? Like, is he going to be like a top 10 receiver? Like,
no, he won't be. And that's
who's behind him? Like, they have no tight ends. I love Jonathan Taylor, but I mean, it's a running back. Can he do it again? They just can't. They can't ride him for another season. And a microcosm of that is they couldn't beat the Jags to get in, who I like better in that division this year. So Colts, I'm out on.
So I think the one thing too for the Colts is like the Colts have a second place schedule, but it's also like 10 of those games are against. It's so crazy to call it a second place schedule because the second place part of it only really applies to the 3 extra teams. It doesn't really apply to the that's really, when you think about it, it doesn't really apply to it. That's the only thing it applies to. They've got 10 games against the 2 worst divisions in football, obviously the 6 against the South and then their division, and then of course the 4 against the NFC East. I think though that the Colts, because they can run the ball so well, and I do expect them to continue to run the ball so well this season, they can cause matchup problems, specifically in the AFC. Right, because you talk about the Chargers, who I think we'll probably mention the Chargers at some point later on in the episode. But like, you look at the Chargers, they made all these acquisitions defensively, but they still can't stop the run. Right, the Chiefs struggled to stop the run. The Bengals have a bit of a trouble with the run game. Right, the Bills kind of not as bad as the other 3 teams, but the Bills kind of struggle with the run. So like,
we saw them struggle against the Colts last year.
Right, so like a lot of it for the Colts is really going to be, like you said, can Jonathan Taylor do it again and pretty much carry this team to a playoff spot and beyond? Like the Colts, I think in order for them to make it to the Super Bowl, the Colts are going to have a season from Jonathan Taylor similar to what we saw Derrick Henry have when the Titans made it to the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. Like, it's going to take a really, really, really good season again from Jonathan Taylor running the ball, and it's just going to have to cause a lot of matchup problems because that's what Tennessee had a couple years ago when they made it all the way to the AFC Championship. I think they can do it. I don't think that though this wide receiver room is going to be lighting up defenses because it's not that great. I do think that there's talent. The Matt Ryan component is more so the leadership component that Carson Wentz clearly lacks. That I think could be the difference because the defense, I think, is there. I have questions about the secondary because it's not that great, but the front 7 is amongst one of the best in football, which should be more than enough, I think, to mask some of the issues that they'll have with the secondary. I know they brought in Stephon Gilmore to kind of help with that, but for the most part, that secondary is not that great once you get past stuff.
Yeah, because I think the Colts. Well, I think that's the difference between the Colts and let's say the Titans, where I think if Derrick Henry was on the Colts and you're like, hey, we're gonna give him like 100% of the workload, and as he goes, we go. I would be behind it because Matt Ryan would. I feel like thrive in that situation.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm not sure Jonathan Taylor is that kind of guy. Maybe that's why you see the Colts. They don't necessarily just hand them the reins and just give him 100% of the running back snaps, but I think also people are always underestimating that division just because you just never really know. We know who the worst team is always, but we never know, all right, 1, 2, and 3, like where they really are. Like Tennessee, all right, I didn't really expect that last year, but I think they're going to be worse this year. I think Jacksonville I wouldn't be surprised if the Jags win that division. And
it is possible.
Because, it could absolutely do it. So Colts, I got to see. Raiders, I'm definitely out on just because I think I think they're the worst team in that division.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because of their offensive line, it's so bad.
Yeah, that's really all it is. The offensive line just can't hold a candle to the other offensive lines in the division at all. That one's a tough one too because it I love Derek Carr and I think Derek Carr is a good quarterback. But if Josh McDaniels can't put this team in a position to win football games, because here's the thing, right? Like this team made it to the playoffs last season with a lot of stuff to deal with, right? Like they have the whole John Gruden thing, and all of that, and all of its problems, right? Obviously, Versace ended up coming in to be the interim head coach, and they made their way into the playoffs. But like, it's gonna take. It's weird because the Raiders now kind of have expectations because now it's like if you can do all that through a tumultuous season, if you have a season where you don't have distractions, you should be able to do that and then some. Right. Yeah. And I know they ended up losing to the Bengals. That was a close win. They almost won that football game against the Bengals. So they were knocking on the door. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Derek Carr threw a pick to end the game.
Yeah. I mean, they were more like jumping through the door and hitting your boy Burrow every play.
So they were right there. It really just depends on, to me, the Josh McDaniels component. But I do think that the talent is there. There's enough talent where they could potentially make some noise, but everything would have to go perfect. Like that's one of the reasons why I look at them as naturally, you wouldn't think that, but like everything would have to go. Like Devontae Adams would still have to be Devontae Adams and not have a drop off. Derek Carr would still have to be Derek Carr, right? Darren Waller and all these guys. Josh Jacobs would have to not be injured and be the best that he can be, despite the offensive line not being that good. And most importantly, the defense, which played better on this in the back half, is going to have to take that back half of last season and do that for an entire football season this season for them to make it, because at best, they'll be third in the division, which I think is enough to get them into the playoffs, even if they are third in the division. And if they make it to the playoffs, then, anything can happen. But I do think them being third doesn't completely knock them out of the hunt for the playoffs. And as long as they can get in the playoffs, I think maybe they could cause some problems. But they would have to be clicking on all cylinders, and that's the big question. But it's a very hesitant, it's
like they're like a 5A, 5B type of selection.
It's a shaky one for sure.
Yeah, I worry about them too because I don't know this exact number, but I think a majority of the top 10 over-under games for this year are like in that division, or like they include a team from that division. So, like, do I see the Raiders putting up, high 20s per game? Like, I don't know if I can consistently agree to say, okay, I trust them. If they get in the shootout, they could put up 30. Like, I'm not going to stamp that.
I wouldn't say
everybody else I can in that division.
I feel like they could hold their own with like 25 a game, but then I don't even know if that would be enough at 20. Yeah. Like they'd have to push 28, which is 4 touchdowns a game, just to kind of stay, especially in the division, because all of those games, they're either going to be shootouts or they're going to be defensive battles. If they're shootouts, I don't like the Raiders' chances. If they're defensive battles, I like the Raiders' chances slightly more, because the defense, I think, is, despite all the talent offensively, I do think that the defense will be the better half of the team this season, just because there hasn't been much loss. And I mean, they lost what's his name? Carl Nassib just went back to Tampa Bay, but they brought in Chandler Jones. So like the defense, I think, could actually be better by bringing in Chandler Jones.
Him and Crosby could be nice.
The offense is going to be the question, because you're bringing in the best wide receiver in football, and now you're going to have to make sure that Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow are still getting the love, while also making sure that Devontae Adams is still getting the targets and the attention that he deserves offensively. That's going to be the juggling act for Derek Carr, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can manage it, because he's never been in this position where he's had to manage this much talent offensively. It's really
and expectations too.
Yeah,
like the Raiders, everybody's assuming because Devontae's there, like, oh, like it's game over, like they're gonna win that division. And like I'm glad you brought up Waller. Dude's still hurt. Like, is he hurt? Does he want a new contract? Like they're saying we're not booking it that he's gonna be ready for week 1. So I mean, they're already coming in with too many question marks. Like, I'm not a betting man, but they're not getting none of my money in Vegas. So
I wouldn't put any money on Vegas at all either, unless it's like a surefire thing. Like, oh yeah, they'll beat the Texans. But like, other than that, I don't know if there's anything beyond. Let's go to the other side, right? We've got through kind of our questions. Let's go to the 5 teams that you think we should expect to see come Super Bowl Sunday in February.
All right, so I'm actually going to rank these.
Okay.
With the caveat of number 1, because I'm actually trolling somebody and they'll know who it is. So 5, I got the Chargers. 4 are the Bucks. 3 are the Rams. 2 are the Chiefs, and 1 is the Bills. So I know we're gonna talk about the Bills. As a matter of fact, we're gonna be talking about the Bills probably for the next 6 hours. So that's going to happen. And there's another team I did want to talk about that was on my previous list, but I figured they were going to be on this part of your list, so I know we'll talk about them. But Chargers, they got to break through at some point. Like, they always have something always something that bites them, that keeps them from getting in, whether it's injuries, dumb coaching decisions. I just think Justin Herbert's too talented to not break through. And I mean, they got a really, I think it's a favorable schedule for the style of play. Like, they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. So I can see that's their type of game where I think they can win. Bucks, it's Brady. He just came off a 2-week vacation with his wife. He told Giselle, look, I'm still going back to work. I think he's coming back. He made Julio Jones come in. Like, anytime Tom Brady's on the field, you got to respect him. Like, they're going to be ready. He's going to be a threat. The Rams, I don't like it that they won it, but I mean, they're still really talented too. Stafford, McVay, the running backs are healthier. Cooper Kupp's still there. You bring in Allen Robinson. They still got Aaron Donald. He's out there choking people and shit. So as long as that core is still together, I believe in it, man. Chiefs, Mahomes, and Andy Reid, can't bet against that. That's almost as automatic as Belichick at this point. And then the Bills, just because everybody's just hyping them up. It's like, what else can the Bills do to just keep getting praise from us? I mean, they got the best roster in football. They got the best quarterback, according to everybody. We should just give him the MVP right now. They play in probably the easiest division for their style of play, and they've been knocking on the door every year. So the Bills have to be number 1. Like, they also have the most pressure on them too, because like, if they don't win the Super Bowl or they don't go to the Super Bowl, then what?
Yeah. And I made that point with Jerm at the top of when we did on the hot seat. Like, I was listing players, but I put the entire Bills at number 1 because, like, for everything you said, right? Like, you have what many believe is the best quarterback in football, and I'm one of them in Josh Allen. You have what many believe is the best quarterback wide receiver tandem in Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. You have who I believe is a top 3 receiver in football in Stephon Diggs, at least top 5 at the least, right? You like the one thing that the Bills don't have is a run game. And for some reason, despite not having a run game, they've still been right there. And it's always just been one small thing, right? Whether it was the 13th, whether it was the, not getting a stop and the coin flip last year, whether it was 2 years ago in the AFC Championship game where they just didn't really look like they were ready to be there yet and they just got owned by the Chiefs. Like, this is a team that's been consistently getting better. And this is the only team in football that is a lock to win their division, I think. Like, you're not going to pick. You can make the debates about, is it going to be the Packers or the Vikings, right? The NFC East is always a toss-up. The AFC West is apparently going to be a toss-up this season, right? The AFC North is going to be between the Bengals and the Ravens. We talked about earlier, there's a chance the Jaguars somehow, if everything goes right for them, could somehow steal the AFC South, right? You've got the NFC South, which we all kind of think is going to be the Bucs, but we could see the Saints win that division because the Bucs have yet the Saints in the regular season. So, like,
it could be the Panthers. The Panthers finally have a quarterback. Like, they could mess stuff up.
Going to be on this revenge tour, right? You like to think the Rams are going to win the West, but if Trey Lance is as advertised, the 49ers could win the West. So, like, the Bills are the only team in football that it's their division to lose, and we all know it, and we all expect them to win the division. And it's like the only way they don't win the division is if something catastrophic happens to someone that's important on the team,
Allen or Diggs.
Josh Allen, like or Diggs or whatever, where they just don't win the division. That's it. Like the Bills are the only team that is locked into winning the division. So like you're right. I do agree with you. I do think they have a lot of pressure, and they're also expected to kind of put it all together this season and make it to and win the Super Bowl, especially considering how their last 2 seasons have ended with like unfortunate heartbreaks and just really bad breaks at the wrong time. So the Bills are number 1 on my list for Super Bowl contenders. The Rams are number 2 because they just won the Super Bowl. You got to put them there. The 3 through 5 has always it's been kind of floppy for me, but 3 is the Bengals. For me, 4 would be the Packers.
I knew it. I knew you couldn't help yourself.
5 is the Chargers. The reason why I have the Packers at number 4, because originally I didn't have the Packers as a Super Bowl contender. And I've been saying for much of the offseason that there were only 2 real Super Bowl contenders in football or in the NFC, and that's the Rams and the Bucks. And I know I just said a couple minutes ago that like it's hard to bet against Brady, but Tom Brady is and you can watch the film for it. Tom Brady is the only quarterback in football that consistently climbs the pocket, right? Like everyone else, whether they're a threat with their legs or not, everyone else rolls either to the left or to the right in the pocket. Like Mac Jones even rolls left and right. Well, sometimes he climbs, but like Tom Brady's the only quarterback in football that climbs up the pocket to kind of buy himself some time and get that ball out of there. And the middle of his offensive line is a whole bunch of question marks, right? Like he lost 2 of his guys due to retirement and one of them left, right? Ryan Jensen tore his ACL. We just saw a week or so ago another one of those interior linemen tear his ACL. So you've got 3 new guys in at the interior line, and that's the most important part of the offensive line for Tom Brady. And I get it, they have talent there, but there's going to take some time for that chemistry to play out. I do still think the Bucs are obviously going to win enough games to make the playoffs or whatnot. But when you're looking at some of the defenses specifically in the NFC, when I'm looking at the Saints, who have already been a matchup problem for the Bucs since Tom Brady's been there, when I'm looking at a defense and the 49ers who, when healthy, is a really good defense, right? When you talk about the Rams, obviously with Aaron Donald, now he plays on the edge, but they could easily put him on the inside. And he can wreak just as much havoc, if not more.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
If the Eagles D line is what it's supposed to be, right? If the Cowboys defense wasn't, that last season was just a flash in the pan, and they can kind of, even though they did lose Randy Gregory, they can still continue to be that good of a defense as they were last season. That could be a problem for them. Like I didn't love it at first, but the Packers defense could cause problems for like. That is, those 3 guys being questionable could cause a lot of problems for the Bucs, and that could ultimately lead to their undoing, where we're looking at one of these playoff games down the stretch, and we get on our show, and all of us get on our shows, and we say, if they still had Ryan Jensen and they still had the guys they had last season, they wouldn't have, like the Bucs last season, as far as offensive line combinations, the 5 starters that they had played 95% of the offensive snaps together last season. That's the most of any team in football last season, like by a mile. Like it's not even close. I don't even think there was another group of 5 guys that played at least 90% of their snaps together. Like that was the most consistent offensive line in football last season, and we saw it. They were a few bad breaks away against the Rams to making it back to the NFC Championship game and potentially back to and winning the Super Bowl for the second consecutive season. So I have come off of the Bucs, and I do think, though, that only because of the defense, it's not an offensive thing. It's not even an Aaron Rodgers thing. It is simply because I do think that the Packers defense is going to be the reason why the Packers are successful this season.
It's gonna have to be.
They're gonna have to,
because it won't be the wide receivers
for the first 6 weeks of the season for sure. And then, of course, when you start talking about shutting down some of these offenses, it's going to have to be the case. Like Jair Alexander is back and healthy. Rasul Douglas is still there. You still have Devondre Campbell. I know we lost Zadarius Smith, but we still have Preston Smith, and there's Kenny Clark, who's one of the best defensive tackles in football. You bring in Quay Walker and Devontae. Like it's going to have to be this defense, and that's why they're there. And that's another like really fuzzy one where I really don't, and I've gotten into arguments with Justin about this. I can't even say with complete confidence that they're Super Bowl contenders. But once, in my personal opinion, once you get past the Bills, the Rams, the Bengals, and the Chargers. I definitely can't see anyone else in the NFC contending for a Super Bowl.
Mm. See, I got to push back.
And
I know it's your
I don't
team.
know.
I know you got rules about what I can say
No, let
about
me
the
have it
Packers.
because this is a shaky pick. Let me have it.
But today we're not doing it, and I
Yeah,
think you're letting me break the rules because you don't feel confident in this pick. And
I
first of all,
I just needed a 15, so I just threw them in
there. So it's basically like I did with my Dolphins. I get it.
Yeah.
So I mean, first of all, you guys can't beat the 49ers, so I don't know how you can put them above above the 49ers when your team has gotten worse.
It's a Trey Lance question for me. I don't think Trey Lance is going to be as advertised this season because
I don't even think he has to be like as advertised would be unrealistic. He just got to be Jimmy G, and he can still beat you guys. And we've seen that. My two question marks with the Packers are simple. One, Rashawn Gary got to become a superstar. I think once he becomes a superstar and those sack numbers go up the way that everybody swears they can, that's when I think people on a nationwide level will be like, all right, that Green Bay defense is up there. Like we're talking about.
And he has the opportunity to do so now that Zadarius Smith is gone. He'll be the number one pass rusher. Yeah.
He's such a physical freak. Like he has to be the difference. He's the most physically gifted guy on your entire team. And it's like, absolutely. I can't take the baby steps anymore. 5, 6 sacks. Okay, good. I can get that from anybody. Blake Martinez could come back and give you that. And then the other thing that I worry about with the Packers is it's Aaron Rodgers. And it's okay. Is he in the retirement? I'm still collecting, paychecks and Social Security mode. And I'm just going, ride this off into the sunset because I'm okay with not being the top 3 or 5 quarterback all time. And, I'm fine with that. I can just play and get paid. Or does he really have that desire to go out there and be like, you know what? Screw this. I'm still that guy. I can beat the 49ers. I can win playoff games at home and I can get to the Super Bowl and win it. Like his mindset will determine how far you guys go. And I'm not so sure he's not in retirement mode. And that's a big deal.
It's possible. It's very possible. I look, no matter what happens with Aaron this season, like whether Aaron wins another championship or whether he doesn't, Aaron Rodgers' legacy is still set in stone. Like he is. He is.
Where is it set though? That's the point.
Well, it depends on how you want to look at it, right? Because there's multiple different. If you want to look at it from a talent perspective, then you look at it and say he's one of the most talented quarterbacks the game has ever seen, right? If you want to look at it from a missed opportunity perspective, then of all the quarterbacks you've seen play football, Aaron Rodgers would have to be, I would say, the most disappointing of all the all-time greats. Because from a talent perspective, he should have more than one Super Bowl.
From a situation perspective, from a situation
standpoint as well, you should have more than one. And I'll say this, and because this is the honest to God truth, right? Like when you come off of when you go from being the first 6 seed in God knows how long at that time, I think actually no, when you go from being the first 6th seed ever, if I'm not mistaken, to go to and win the Super Bowl, you follow that up with a 15-1 season, and then you lose in the division round to the New York Giants, like. That's not good, right? So when you go from that to then you have, I think the year after that was the Dez Carter year, and then that was the year we played the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game and gave up what was like 15 points in 24 seconds or in 42 seconds, something like that. That was disgustingly bad, right? So that's 2014. In 2015, we fall short, don't make it back to the NFC Championship game. 2016, we get absolutely dusted by the Falcons. 17 and 18 were down years because Aaron was dealing with injury. You come to 19 and 20, you go to 2 straight NFC Championship games. The 49ers ran all over us in 2019, and the defense just didn't show up. And in 2020, of course, there's the big question mark with what was happening on that 4th down on the goal line when you have a chance to win.
You mean when he should have ran in, but Devin White was going to tag him?
Yeah, of course. And then of course you've got last year when you don't allow an offensive touchdown and still somehow lose the game in the playoffs. Like, so Aaron Rodgers is unfortunately one of those all-time great, not just football players, but all-time great athletes that you look at and you say, this is like, aside from the individual awards of the 4 MVPs and having one of the greatest, if not, I'm not mistaken, still the greatest touchdown interception ratio of all time, like, you got nothing to show for it from a team standpoint as far as what you delivered to Green Bay. Like, Green Bay is called Title Town, and you've delivered one title to Green Bay. And when you look at his predecessor predecessor in Brett Favre, and many people would say that Aaron Rodgers is more talented than Brett Favre. I think it's close. I think you could go either way with it. I definitely think Brett Favre is a better leader than Aaron Rodgers, and that would, in my mind,
sure.
that would give him the edge for me if I'm picking a quarterback. But to have just 2 Super Bowl victories between those 2 guys that are uber talented, like that's even more of an indictment for Aaron, because Aaron was supposed to be Brett Favre with a little bit more talent and a little bit more oomph and bring more championships to Green Bay. So like it just didn't work out. And that's Aaron's legacy. Is it this really talented guy that just didn't work out? Him winning a championship this season, he's locked in for 2 or 3 more years. Aaron Rodgers can win the next 3 championships. That doesn't take away from what he is, which is
it definitely
a very
changes.
Talented guy that
if he wins 2 more championships, he could be number 1. I mean, not number 1, number 2 behind Brady. Like that's the difference between him being number 2 or we're talking about 8 or 9. Like
that's fair. But see, and that's the thing for me as a fan. And maybe I'm a bit harder on Aaron because I'm a fan, but I don't know if I'm going to look at Aaron Rodgers. Let's say he does win 2 more. Now he's at 3. I don't know if I look at Aaron Rodgers from a total. I know he's more talented than him, but I don't know if I look at Aaron right now or in 2 years if he has 2 more championships and say that he was a better quarterback than Peyton Manning all time.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
Because for Peyton, the issue with Peyton was he would have had more championships if it wasn't for freaking Tom Brady. He's the greatest regular season quarterback of all time.
But he's kind of in that same boat as Aaron Rodgers. They had a lot of home field advantage in years where they had teams where they were supposed to run the table. They had more talent. Sure. They just ran into Belichick and Brady. But you're Peyton Manning. You're supposed to overcome that. And Peyton Manning realized that. That's why he was like, let me go to Denver.
Yeah.
It's my last chance to submit my legacy.
But even with despite not having the postseason success, which you're right, it is inexcusable to an extent. You still look at Peyton Manning and you look at his regular season performances, and we haven't seen a quarterback do what Peyton Manning has done in the regular season of the NFL. Like he's the only, what is he, a 5-time MVP? No one else can say that. And he's a great leader. So it's like, yeah, Aaron's more talented and he's more physically gifted, but he's not the leader that Peyton Manning was. So even if he gets 1 more ring than Peyton Manning, for me, I don't think that that's enough to put him ahead of Peyton. I don't think that's enough to put him ahead of Joe Montana. Like if we're being honest, Aaron Rodgers winning 2 more rings puts him at 3 rings, and he'd go from being 7 to 10 to being 4th definitively. Because here's the thing, Aaron has a ring, and there's still an argument whether or not Aaron Rodgers is better than your guy Dan Marino. I
don't think he is. I think Dan Marino, just on talent alone and what the circumstances he had to deal with, I think he's above Aaron Rodgers. But
I agree with you, and I agree with you. And what I'm saying is, I don't. And Aaron has a ring that Dan doesn't. So that's the I don't at his Aaron Rodgers' ceiling with 2 more championships is the 4th greatest quarterback of all time to me. Maybe 3rd, depending on who you ask.
I think he could be 2 because, well, first of all, I feel like you're talking out of anger right now. And this has turned into a Packers segment. I love it. I feel like you're just angry. You're angry because you guys keep blowing home field advantage. And understandably, I know why you're upset. My rule of thumb is if your mama don't like you can't be in my top 3. But if he wins 2 more championships in the next 3 years, just think about it. How old is he? And he's doing this. And he did it without Devontae Adams.
Sure.
Like, come on. That's got to count for something, because Joe Montana won all his Super Bowls. Now he won them, but he had squads. This will probably be the least talented offenses that have won a Super Bowl if he wins the next 2. This will be the ultimate feat. He would have to be number 2 at that point. And you'd be ecstatic. You'd be on here calling him number 1 if he won 2 Super Bowls in 3 years.
No, I wouldn't. There is no. I think honestly. So here's the thing, and you're right. There is a narrative thing that plays into Aaron's favor if, for some reason, Green Bay does win the next 2, because you look at it and you say, well, right now, from an AFC, NFC perspective, no matter who it is, even if the Rams go back to the Super Bowl, they're probably not going to be better than whatever team comes out of the AFC, because the AFC is just one big field of iron sharpening iron.
Yeah, they're like the SEC.
You're going to have to be at the, if in the AFC, if you make it to the Super Bowl, you earned it. You went through. You would have had to go through 3 of the 5 best teams in football that season, probably, to make it to the Super Bowl. With the NFC, it's like, yeah, okay, it's Tampa Bay, Green
49ers.
Bay, and like I mean, sure. So like, good for him if he can, get past the 49ers. That'd be great for Aaron Rodgers if he can do that. Listen, I'll be honest. In a perfect world, and I have said this before, in a perfect world, a Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl run this season looks like a win against San Francisco, whether it's in the Bay or at home, a win against Tampa Bay, and a win against either the Rams or the Cowboys. It doesn't matter in which order, but that would be, I think, the
That's
perfect run
easy.
for Aaron Rodgers. That's not
That's
easy,
you.
but
I don't know if the AFC path is that much more difficult. I mean, that's a gauntlet itself.
it
Rams,
is.
Bucks,
But I
and
think for Aaron,
49ers.
what it does is it does a couple things. He finally beats 49ers in the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
He finally beats Brady in a game that matters, because I think Aaron's beat Brady, I think, one time in the regular season, because they've only played each other in the regular season. That was when he was in New England. I mean, we got a chance to see him play Brady this season, so we'll see what happens. But in a game that matters, Aaron Rodgers can't beat Tom Brady. So he does that. He beats the Raiders, or he beats the Rams, and then whether it's a game against the Cowboys, who somehow has become one of the Packers' biggest rivals in the playoffs, because there's always trash talking between the two fan bases, or whether it's a game against the Rams, because it's the Rams and it's also Matt Stafford, who he's been little brothering for the past, better part of a little over a decade now. Like, that would be the perfect run for Aaron Rodgers. And if he caps it off by beating, say, a Buffalo Bills team that everyone expected to win the Super Bowl, or a Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who everyone was comparing to Aaron Rodgers at one point when Patrick Mahomes was first starting, right? Whether it's even the Broncos somehow, and we see Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson again in the game that matters. Like, there's multiple different scenarios where it would be a gauntlet. You're right. And that would be really, really tough. But if he does it, now it means something. Even still, it's like, okay, now you have two. How many quarterbacks in the history of football have 2 rings, not named Joe Montana? And you've got Joe Montana, you have Tom Brady, Peyton Manning's up there, obviously. Troy Aikman has 3, I think.
Yeah, they have 3.
You've got like Teddy Bridgewater.
Ben's got 2.
Ben's got 2. Eli's got 2. I think Teddy Bradshaw has 2. I think John Elway has 2. So like, you're starting to get into that, because here's what I'll say. Maybe it'll mean a little bit less if Aaron goes to another one and wins another one, because then it'll be like, at least when he gets there, he might not get there all the time, but then he'll get the Eli treatment of like, he doesn't get there all the time, but then like when he does get there, then he wins it. But Eli's means more because he beats Brady, and also his 2 championships were in really his only 2 playoff runs in his career.
Yeah,
and Aaron's had a whole lot more playoff runs in his career than Eli has, and you still look
really
at
runs
it,
though.
That's the thing. It's like they're not even really runs, because so it's a catch-22 for Aaron either way.
He's got a
catch-22 for him anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's why you see him like the way he's acted the past couple of years. 'Cause I think he's admitted it to himself. Like, I'm in an impossible spot. It's very unlikely that I get into the top 3. It's more likely that I'm competing for the 8 or 9. And once you're in that situation, I'm like, all right, how much money can I make? And I don't blame him for that.
You can't. I mean, look, it's the road's not going to get any easier, because there's still young talent at the quarterback position in the NFC that just hasn't peaked yet, right? I would say that Dak is in his prime, but he's the only one. Like,
Kyler.
And Kyler's in his prime as well. Trey is going to be coming up on his prime. Jalen Hurts will be coming up on his prime as well, right? If the Cowboys get their coaching thing together and a couple other small things, like, they could be once again, not just like a thing over it's going to be our year, but like actually legitimately competing for championships. Like, so it's not going to get any easier. Aaron has, I would say, a 2-year window of where the only true threat in the conference is as far as stopping, like, legitimate threats, aside from all the slip ups and the hiccups of that's would stop him legitimately from getting back to the Super Bowl, would be the Rams and the Bucks. I don't know.
As long as Shanahan's there, he's y'all biggest kryptonite in NFC. You just can't do it.
That's fair. That's fair. And then you can throw the 49ers in there as well. But
I'm taking the Bengals out. I know you love Joe Burrow. I know you know his full name. I know you got a jersey. We owe you one. But I just can't. First of all, The Rams, it's risky even picking them in the top 5 because it's hard to go back and repeat as the winner. It's even harder to go back to a Super Bowl as the loser.
You're
And
right.
let's be honest, the Bengals had the luckiest run to the Super Bowl I ever seen. First of all, Joe Burrow needs to send a portion of whatever contract he signs to Lamar Jackson because if he doesn't get hurt, the Ravens are the number 1 seed. And I don't think that the Ravens are just going to lose to the Bengals like that. The Titans, worst number 1 seed I ever seen. And
Yeah.
then you play the Chiefs where it was just bad timing. Like they had just played them to end the regular season, and it's weird when you face teams back to back like that so soon. So they really got lucky. Now, are they talented? Absolutely. I think Joe Burrow's a stud. We can admit that. But I'm gonna say it again. Dude got smacked so much last year. Just look at the Tennessee game. No normal person would survive that. And I'm pretty sure if he has to go through that again, he won't survive it. And their offensive line is still not good. I know everybody wants to say, like, oh, they upgraded. It's not about upgrading. It's you got to show me you know what you're doing in talent evaluation to make the O-line good. I can bring in help, but if it's bad help, my quarterback's still going to get hit. So I just don't trust them. History says they've been bad. I don't trust their coach. I think that's why they struggle at times because I don't think he knows what type of team they want to be. Burrow holds them up a lot, where I think as Cincinnati Bengals things probably hold them back more. And I think you'll start to see that this year. I just don't trust them. That division's always tough. He got to stay healthy. I trust the Steelers. I trust the Ravens. And I kind of trust the Browns a little bit. And I trust them even more once Deshaun comes back.
I do think next season, Cincinnati's road to at least the playoffs as far as winning the division will be much tougher because Deshaun will be there for the whole season. Of course, you'll still have Lamar there as long as the Ravens don't fumble, right? Hopefully the Ravens still have Lamar. And if the Steelers can figure out their quarterback situation this season and they're confident in it, then this division can go back to being what I always thought it as, which is the most physical and probably the most toughest division in football, because no matter what happens with the teams, as far as how we think they're going to be, the teams always play each other hard. And a lot of that has to do with they're all like right next to each other. Like, and this is probably the only division in football where all the teams are literally like right there. And you can see it in the games. Like there's like Ravens fans travel, Browns fans travel, Bengals fans definitely travel now because their team is good. And
now they can show their faces.
Right. And Steelers fans are going to travel no matter what because it's the Steelers and that's just kind of like their coach. Like this is a very I think that the Bengals this season have one more season to take control of the AFC North and just be the best that they can possibly be and see if they can weather the storm of the AFC. I'm one of very few people that don't see all 4 teams in the AFC West making it into the playoffs. I don't know what that's going to look like from a matchup perspective, but the Bengals are just it's weird because Joe Burrow has the ultimate confidence in himself. I mean, it's warranted, and I think the Bengals recognize that, like, as Burrow goes, the team goes, and that even applies for the defense, right?
Sure.
And I do think that another thing that helps the defense is Jesse Bates did sign the franchise tag, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, at least he'll be there.
I think he's back.
And that won't be a thing that's hanging over the head of the defense. So they'll be able to just play football. The Bengals have this could be their last shot. And as much as big of a fan of Joe Burrow as I am, I'm willing to admit that this season could be their last season.
Wow.
To make it because the division is going to be tougher next season. Like, I don't like him as a human being.
It's Joe Burrow though. Like
there for Deshaun.
You think it's him and Josh Allen? That I feel like that's your quarterback rankings. Like you got to believe Joe Burrow is he's gonna own that division for the next 10 years, right?
I think Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow could be because there's stuff around him that works, and they're all young. And unless the Bengals just can't get can't make the money right, so they're all there. But like Joe Mixon and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I mean, Tyler Boyd's older than all of them, but like those 4 guys are all in the same age bracket. Like their birthdays are months apart. So like as long as the money is right, they're all going to be there. And from an offensive standpoint, that's what's most important is keeping those 4 guys together as long as possible. When you start talking about the Browns, right? Like, okay, the Browns still need to figure themselves out, even with Deshaun Watson. And I recognize that Deshaun being there makes them a little bit more attractive as far as free agency is concerned because he's a capable quarterback. But the Browns are still the Browns, and you can kind of still count on like we. It's possible that maybe I don't think he would be, but there's a chance that Deshaun Watson doesn't just come back and be the Deshaun Watson that we last saw him
2
to be.
years.
It's been 2 years, and it'll be put. And so, like, I get it. He'll be playing the last 5 weeks of the season, but there'll be meaningless games unless Jacoby Brissett can keep this team afloat for the first.
That
for their
schedule is
first,
very favorable for them.
It's possible, but it's Deshaun. The division will get tougher, but I think what the Bengals have in their favor is they've got a core offensively, which is not something that the Ravens can say because their core offensively right now is really just Lamar Jackson because they traded away Hollywood Brown. I know they've got Mark Andrews, and I love Mark Andrews, and I hate the disrespect that he gets, but they don't really have a core offensively, a healthy core offensively anyway because their running backs are hurt. The Steelers are in a weird bridge rebuilding thing where it's like if they get the quarterback and it's the right one, they could be right back in the thick of things. But if they don't, then we could see them fall into a complete rebuild. And the Browns, it's like their core offensively is just a whole bunch of free agents. And if it doesn't work out, then it's going to be a revolving door of free agency. If it does work out, then they're going to have to try to figure out how they're going to keep all these guys on the payroll to keep it going. The Bengals, I think, are the only team that doesn't really have any questions about that right now offensively, and that's what's most important because Joe Burrow is the guy, and he has his weapons, and they're locked in for at least another 4 or 5 years together before things start getting crazy.
I think the Bengals have a couple worries, though. One, I think
there are things to be concerned about. I don't think it's going to be a piece of cake for sure.
The one thing that we're clearly glossing over here, I think is a big thing, is they got really lucky with injuries last year. Like, what major injury did they suffer?
I don't think they really had a major injury last season.
That's what I'm saying. So it's the NFL. We know that's not going to happen. So you healthy one year, more likely you're going to regress toward the mean the next year. Who are some of the injury-prone players on that team? Quarterback, Joe Mixon. Those guys you can't afford to lose. So one, the Bengals won't be as healthy this year, and two,
it's possible.
The road in the AFC will never be as easy as it was last year. Never be as easy. Like the Titans had the number 1 seed. Like they might not even make the playoffs this year. It was perfect for them, and I think that was their one shot. And it's just the Bengals organization. Like they've had flash in the pan moments before, and they got to show me that this wasn't one of those situations. And I just don't trust them to keep Burrow healthy. They'll find some way to mess this up, and it'll be over. Like I agree with you. I don't think their window is as open as people think that it is, and I don't think is as open as maybe like the Bills or like some of the other teams that even if things go wrong here or there, like they still have enough consistent pieces to keep their window open, and the right move could extend it a little bit further. I don't think they're in that group.
No, they're not. The Bengals and I'll admit the Bengals are on paper once you get past what they have offensively, a rather average football team. Like this team doesn't like, and I'm not afraid to like. This is a team that there's talent, like they have the talent, but I know for a fact if you take Jamar Chase and you take Joe Burrow off this football team, this team doesn't do what they did last season.
Well, that's a lot of teams.
Right? No,
a lot of teams.
Right, but what I'm saying is there are other teams when you look at and you say, okay, and I won't, and let's not use extreme examples like the guys that I think are top 4. So Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, or Aaron Rodgers, right? But like if you put some other quarterback not named Joe Burrow on this team,
put Dak on that team.
You put Dak on this team, I don't think the Bengals go as far as they went. I don't think the Bengals are a Super Bowl team last season. I think Dak's really, really talented, but I think Joe Burrow's better, right? Like I don't know. They're in the same conversation, and I think maybe what it needs for Joe to happen is Joe needs to have another one of those seasons because it is very possible that. And I love Joe Burrow, and I think Joe Burrow's fantastic, but I am also aware that it could just be a scenario where maybe Joe Burrow doesn't perform this season the way he did last season, and maybe we do kind of just see the Bengals go back to being the Bengals. It's possible, despite how talented he is. It is really possible. You take Joe Burrow off this team, you put Kyler Murray on this team. I don't think I don't think the Bengals make it to the Super Bowl. Like
I don't think the drop off is that far, to be honest with you. Because
it's not a steep drop off, but all it takes is one game. You know what I mean? I don't know if Kyler Murray can. I don't think Kyler Murray gets past, or I don't think Kyler Murray has the leadership ability or the impact to forget the Raiders game, because I think we all recognize that the big kind of confusion and kind of lucky stars moment was that game against the Titans. I don't think Kyler Murray can get sacked 9 times and not get shaken.
Well, I don't think Kyler Murray going to get sacked 9 times because he could take off. Like, that's the thing with Joe Burrow.
That is true.
Like I think, and I don't want to. I know I always seem like I'm a Joe Burrow hater. Like, I like him. I think he's talented. I wish the Dolphins had him, but we don't. To be realistic, outside of their magical run last year, they're really, to be honest with you, they're really closer to like the Minnesota Vikings. Like, really good core of quarterback, receivers, and running back, mid offensive line, and a defense that might show up every now and then, even though they have talented pieces. Like, I look at them and the Vikings, they're exactly the same. And the Vikings have been stuck in, all right, we'll hit a championship game and then we'll fall back to the 8-10 win seasons. Like, that's what I feel the Bengals are going to do unless they show me something. Like, last year was their Minnesota miracle moment. They didn't capitalize. So now they're back to that 8-10 win max mode. Like, that's how I feel about them.
And that's fair. That's why I said, like, when you look at it from the grain scheme of things, this is. And look, right, you see Super Bowl hangovers, right? It's more likely that the team that lost the hangover is going to feel it, or the team that loses the Super Bowl is going to feel the hangover a lot more than the team that won it, right? Case in point, how terrible the Atlanta Falcons have been since they blew that lead in the Super Bowl. Like, it's just been, I don't think we've seen a hangover that bad.
Is that a hangover, or is that like we don't have a Shanahan thing anymore?
It could be a bit of both, but they just completely like fell apart and just washed away to the wayside. An even better example is the Panthers just the year before. Now, they didn't win it, of course, but like, they go to the Super Bowl, and I'll admit that was a crazy 15-1 season. They really should.
Yeah, it was. Looking back, that was probably one of the more crazier successful seasons.
But like, you look at that, and it's just been like wowzers, like, as far as what they've been able to do on, and not in a good way. So the Bengals, I think, because of who their quarterback is, and because I feel like they have a better grip on what it is they're trying to accomplish this season, I think there's a bit more confidence within the locker room because they recognize that they can do it. If they don't make it back this season, it's going to be a very long time before they make it back again, if ever. Because Josh Allen,
they might not even make the playoffs. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if that happens.
It's possible, but I don't think that, just because I don't think all 4 teams in the AFC West are going to make it. If all 4 teams in the AFC West make it into the playoffs, then absolutely. There's no way that any other division is going to be able to put in only one other division can put in 2 teams. And that's either going to be the Bengals and the Ravens, or the Bills and the Pats, or the Titans. Like, that's what it turns out to be. Because I don't think all 4 teams are making to the AFC West, I'm more likely to believe that they can still make the playoffs. And I know I have them winning the division. But even if they don't win the division, the Ravens do win the division, they could still make the playoffs. But it would have to also mean that one of the other, either the Raiders or the Broncos specifically, aren't going to make the playoffs. I can't foresee a scenario where the Chargers or the Chiefs aren't making the playoffs. Unless the coaching gets in the way for LA, I don't see a scenario where they miss the playoffs for a third time under Joe Burrow. Because here's the thing: Justin Herbert has had the greatest, statistically, when you take away obviously Pat Mahomes has the greatest start as far as the awards are concerned. But when you look at just the stats, no one's thrown for more yards or more touchdowns.
Yeah, Herbert's a stud.
Herbert, since in their first 2 years. Right now, when you add in like the awards, obviously that's where Pat Mahomes saved the cake, because he got the MVP and the Offensive Player of the Year and the Super Bowl appearances and all that good stuff. But from a pure production standpoint, statistically, Justin Herbert's had a fantastic start to his career. If for a 3rd consecutive season, Justin Herbert plays really good football and he ends up in the MVP conversation, like a lot of people think he will, along with Josh Allen, and they miss the playoffs again, then we could be looking at a situation where the Chargers are going to once again have to find a new head coach, which
They
means
should
that
have already tried to do that.
they should have already tried to do that, I think, which means that they'll be right back in a scenario where they'll have to wait maybe at least 1 year before we could see, like, it could be some time before Justin Herbert makes the playoffs if they don't do it this season. Because I feel like the Los Angeles Chargers front office has to come to terms with the fact that the reason why has nothing to do with the talent on the field or nothing to do with Justin Herbert and everything to do with the guy that's calling the shots on the sideline. Anthony Lynn got 2 years in Los Angeles. He got 3 years actually, but he got 1 year with Justin Herbert. Then they sent him on his way. Brandon Staley had 1 year. He didn't make it. He's got another year. I would be shocked if they give him another one if his decisions keep the Chargers out of the playoffs.
I think they'll keep him Staley for the remainder of his contract just because of where he came from. Like, you came from the McVay tree, so I think that earns you a little bit of respect. You know, the same thing with like Kingsbury, like guys like that are going to get respect. They're going to, at least you would have to have a monumental collapse for them not to honor at least the extent of your first deal. Like, I think Staley's going to get all his time, just because they can't be that bad, because even as bad of a coach as he could be, like, offense is just too talented. Like, they're gonna there's no way they win like 5 or 6 games.
No, of course they'll win. And here's the thing: when you look at it, if you look at it like, okay, when they had Phillip Rivers in Phillip Rivers' last season, the Chargers were 12-4. The Chiefs were 12-4, if I'm not mistaken. And the only reason why the Chargers were a wild card team instead of the winners of the division was because of a tiebreaker, right? Then, of course, the season after that, in Justin Herbert's first season, there was a whole bunch of just craziness with as far as like bad decision makings and bad play calls are concerned, and so
bad medical attention
and bad medical attention as well, right? And then Brandon Staley's first season, last season, of course, we saw how all that unwinded. Like, we could see another scenario where the Chargers are primed to be in a situation where it's going to be a tiebreak. You're going to have to win at least 12 games in this division to have a shot at winning the division, because at their worst, the Chiefs still win 12 games and win the division. The only team I think that's equipped to win at least 12 games outside of Kansas City in this division is LA. And I'll be honest with you, I have more faith in the Chargers winning 12 than I do in the Chiefs winning 12.
Oh,
and that has
everything
to do with, but for me, it has everything to do with the defense. Like, I understand how great the Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes thing has been, but the Chiefs defense has been mediocre at best.
But why have they been mediocre? Because the same guys that are there now, besides Khalil Mack, a washed Khalil Mack at this point, are still there. They've always had Bosa. They've always had Derwin James. Like, they've always had these guys. The problem is they just don't stay on the field. So
right. And
the Chiefs are always going to be there. Like, their defense can be mid or bad, and they've still shown they can run that table.
But I feel like the Chiefs are going to be in a lot of shootouts. And I get it. They're equipped to be in a shootout, but are they this season as equipped to be in a shootout as they were in previous seasons? Because Tyreek Hill is not there. And I do feel like that's a major, like, I get it. You've got Juju and you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you have Sky Moore and you have Mecole Hardman. I get it. That isn't a bad wide receiver room. But we're talking about a scenario where, like, when they really needed a big time play down the field and when these shootout like games, it was Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. Who's going to be that guy? Like, he's not a wide receiver, but Travis Kelce's wide receiver one. We all know.
Andy Reid will figure it out.
Is it going to be reliable though? Can you trust the other end? Because he'll figure it out. He'll scheme the guy as open, but it's not going to be the same. Like, the connection's not going to be there, I don't think, for a minute, and that could be a problem for Kansas City. Not to mention the fact that their defense is going to take a step back because they just lost the Honey Badger. And the Honey Badger was really the only reason why you looked at the Kansas City Chiefs defense and said, maybe there's a chance.
But they replaced him with Reed, who I think is good. Chris Jones, they're finally putting him back to where I think he's a better fit instead of trying to turn him into an edge rusher. Like, I think their defense, it's never been great. It's never been great. They've been just fine. It's just bend but don't break, and we have some moments. Like, they'll be fine. It's Mahomes and Reed. Like, as long as they can keep things going, it doesn't even have to be at the Tyreek level. I think they can get to 12 wins. It's just automatic at this point. The Chargers, they got to show me something.
They'll have at least 10, that's for sure. And I know they'll have at least 10. But I do stay healthy. I do think, though, that from a I think though that defenses aren't going to be afraid to stack the box
That's a
against Kansas
mistake.
City. It is a mistake, but like I
That's a
don't think they'll
mistake.
be afraid to do it. But like I also don't think they'll be afraid to run more
Like
man coverage.
blitzes,
There's
like
in all
zero
these,
blitz.
because there's no one that you can say with complete confidence can beat defenses on the wide receiver room as consistently as Tyreek did it. Tyreek beat defenses man coverage, he beat defenses zone coverage, and it was by yards and yards at a time. I don't think there's anyone in this wide receiver room right now that can do that, which means that defenses can take more risks and get a little bit more crazy and try to make things a little bit more difficult for this offense. And we saw last season that they stumbled out of the gate. They were what 2-4 or 2-5 at one point before they kind
But
of
I
turned it
think,
around and pushed it and got to where they needed to be.
but
I
maybe
I
we're
wouldn't
looking
be
at it the wrong
shocked
way
if
though.
they needed that to get if that happens again this season.
But maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. I think everybody's expecting, okay, like the Chiefs only run things this one way. Like one thing about Andy Reid, like he's going to adjust the scheme to the players that he has. Like, yeah, you have a guy like Tyreek, it's deep shots, but you saw what happened last year. Like they adjusted. The reason they struggle is the same reason why the Bills struggled initially. Is teams were just like, all right, cool, we're not giving you these deep shots. We're just going to sit two safeties deep. And you're going to have to work underneath. And they did just fine doing that. Like the Chiefs were in AFC Championship game, not hitting the deep balls to Tyreek as consistently as they did in the past. Like that's what I'm saying. Andy Reid and Mahomes, as long as those two are together, they're going to be fine because those two will figure it out based on who they're playing against and the personnel that they have. Like they know they don't have a Tyreek, so they're going to come at you completely different. And to me, that makes them even more scary because I think a lot of people around the league are thinking the same thing that you're thinking. All right, yeah, they don't got Tyreek, so like when they try to go for these deep shots, like we'll be fine. Like no, like they're gonna be ready. I just don't trust the Chargers. They're always hurt. They always find a way to mess it up. They have
That's
the
fair.
worst coach in the division, so it's them to get to 12 will be more impressive than the Bengals going to the Super Bowl last year.
Really, you think the Chargers
Yeah,
winning 12 this year would be more? That's
way more impressive.
That's fair because they do have a health problem, and that would it's rare that we see, especially defensively. It's rare that we see the big names stay healthy for at least 12 games in a season. And again, like I said at the top, right? Like they were the 25th ranked defense in football last season. They added J.C. Jackson, they added Khalil Mack, and that's cool.
And he's already hurt.
But for one, both of those guys I think have already been dealing with injury, especially J.C. Jackson. He's definitely hurt. Khalil Mack has had some injury problems, but also like neither of those guys address the issue, which is the run game. And that could be the undoing for the Chargers again is not being able to run the football. So that is a fair point. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. It's always a pleasure to have a JT on the show. Of course, it's even more fun when his partner in crime Don is here as well, because I just get to kind of sit back and let them go at it for about 45 minutes of the hour, and I just chime in every now and then. Please let everybody know, JT, where they can find you and Don's content.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us on. This is the most talented man. I'm telling you, nobody works harder than him. I swear, like he does a show a day. So y'all go follow him. But yeah, JT and the Don, you can find us anywhere. JT and the Don, All Sports Podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, and follow us on social media at JT and the Don, IG, Twitter, TikTok, we're everywhere. So you can find us any place that you want.
I truly enjoy working with JT and Don, and I appreciate the high praise. And yeah, you guys know where to find me. GTP Marcus on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can find us now on Facebook by either searching up GTP Marcus or by typing in my name in Facebook. You'll see my logo. And you can follow us on Facebook as well. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio is where you can watch or listen. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review, and all that good stuff. So more people can see it. And to JT's point, I've dropped an episode every day since the 3rd, right? So went live on the 3rd to talk about Clash of the Castle. Obviously dropped the 2 episodes on the 4th and the 5th. Today is the 6th. We'll be dropping the final part of this extension of the offseason series where I finally release my playoff predictions and my award predictions. I'll be doing that with Peyton Doyle. That's on the 7th. And then the night of the 7th will be episode 200. We'll be going live on the 7th. with the crew to do one final group breakdown of the NFL, and we'll kind of have a nice little roster there to celebrate 200 and also celebrate the return of real football, because the preseason's great, but it does not compare to actual regular season football in the NFL. So for JT, one half of JT and the Don, this is Marcus of Go Talk with Marcus signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, you guys enjoy the rest of your lives.